Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and it's a great pleasure for me to be back here at Fort Benning. General McMaster, General Grange, distinguished guests, fellow Rangers, families of Rangers, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow soldiers, good morning. I'm very pleased to be with you this morning and honored to have the opportunity to preside at the 30th Best Ranger Award ceremony. I was invited by General Grange last year to do this, and once you've been invited by General Grange, you have been invited. He bombarded me with handwritten notes. He did everything imaginable to get me here, but it wasn't a difficult decision to make. It's my pleasure and my honor not only to be here, but to be with General Grange, a buddy of mine, a mentor of mine for so many, many years, and who is the spirit behind this competition. And let me also thank the EPS Corporation for making it possible for me to be here, and to thank all of the corporations in this area that help with this program and are contributors to the Ranger Awards program as well as to the Maneuver Center of Excellence. Colonel Lear, I thank you for your kind introduction, but you left out a lot of stuff. He noted that I was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he noted that I was Secretary of State of the United States of America, but he left out all the Fort Benning stuff. I was stationed at Benning for a total of about 4 years. I added it up last night. I'm a graduate of the basic course, of course. I'm a graduate of the Advanced Infantry Officers course. I'm a graduate of the Airborne course. I was the honor graduate in my Pathfinder course. I taught mine warfare as a brand new second lieutenant at the infantry school. I graduated from the instructor training course here at Fort Benning, and after that I then taught in battalion and brigade operations for a year. And of course I'm a graduate of the Ranger course, so I did it all. But of all these things that I did here at Fort Benning over that 4-year period, it was the Ranger course that was the greatest challenge of my life to that time of my life. I was tested to the very limit of my physical and mental abilities. Almost 55 years later, I still remember everything about that course. I remember stumbling along mountain trails in North Georgia. I still smile when I think about that moment of total exhaustion on one of those trails when I was starting to hallucinate after day, night after night. And I still remember vividly, 55 years later, at one point we took a break and I reached into my pocket and I pulled out an imaginary quarter so I could put in the imaginary Coke machine that was right in front of me. And as I reached down to get the imaginary Coke, they said, "Move out!" And I never got my imaginary Coke. But that's what was demanded of us young lieutenants, and I still smile about it, because I had to pass this test. I had to pass this ultimate test that I was given at 21 years of age, and I did. I became a Ranger and was on my way, filled with confidence from my experience here at Fort Benning. I need to reflect and share with you what Benning and the Ranger course meant to me. I started my career here in the summer of 1958. I was just a kid second lieutenant from New York, born in Harlem and raised in the South Bronx section of New York City. Later in my career, especially after I became chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I was asked by many people, particularly my foreign visitors, the counterparts that I had around the world, fellow chairmen, what year did you graduate from West Point? And I would smile and say, well, I didn't graduate from West Point. I couldn't have dreamed of getting into West Point because of my high school record. It was a wonder I got in anywhere. Well, did you graduate from one of the great military institutions? Was it VMI, the Citadel, Texas A&M? And I said, no, you need to understand that was another time in our nation's history, and as a black kid, I could not have gotten into any of those schools because they were segregated. They wouldn't let black kids in. And they looked a little awkward at that point, a little embarrassed for having asked in the first place. But I tell them where I did go. I went to the City College of New York, a public school in Harlem, about a mile from where I was born. And it was ROTC that turned me on. I went to college because my parents demanded it. I went to college because my mother wanted me to be an engineer. I lasted in the engineering program about 6 months. And then I became a geology major because it was the easiest thing to get at the time. But it was in my geology first semester that I discovered ROTC. I found that which I did well. I found something that was me. I found something that I loved doing and wanted to do, at least for a part of my life. I was warned upon graduation from the City College of New York and getting my commission as a second lieutenant that I was leaving New York and I was going to the South. And the post might be integrated as Fort Benning was, but not the community around Fort Benning. And I was in the first group of black officers who entered the Army after segregation really ended around 1953-54. So I was in the first group of black officers who could take advantage of the completely integrated Army. I like to tell people that the Army, the Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force was the most socially progressive institution in the United States of America at that time. And when I came here, what they said to me was, look kid, we don't care if you're black, blue, or white. We don't care that you came from an immigrant background somewhere in a poor section of the South Bronx and Harlem. The only thing we care about is performance. If you perform, if you meet our standards, you can rise in the Army. And if you don't meet our standards, you will not rise. Thank you, sir. That's all I ever asked for. Time passes, and Benning was an oasis of a segregated community. And it was while I was here in the advance course in 1964 that President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and the country changed. I say all this not to talk about the past, but to talk about the present, and to celebrate again how far we have come, what a wonderful country we live in that is so resilient, that is constantly changing as our society changes. And I'm proud that I came along at a time when I could take advantage of the changes of the 60s. Next month, I'm proud to say my alma mater, the City College of New York, will name a school of the college after me. 1/3 of the student body will now be enrolled in the Colin Powell School for Civic and Global Leadership. I'm enormously proud of that, but I assure you that my academic professors from that time are now rolling over in their graves at the prospect of me having a school named after me. Because I'll tell you what happened. As I was getting close to graduation, I'd been there about 4.5 years, going on 5. And the authorities at CCNY said, what are you going to do with this guy? And they said, tell you what, he does well in ROTC. So let's roll his ROTC grades into his overall grade point average and see what we get. And they did. It brought me up to a 2.0. And they said, good enough for the government, send him to the Army, we'll never see him again. And now I'm considered one of the greatest sons the City College of New York has ever had. What I love, I talk to lots of students. I talk high schools, colleges, elementary schools, you name it. And what I say to young people, it's not where you start in life, it's where you end up and what you did along the way. Your past is not your present is not your future. So always be your own role model. Always be striving to do the best that you can be. And that philosophy of mine was started right here at Fort Benning, Georgia. Be the best that you can be. And at CCNY, we have students of limited means. We have students who are mostly minority, mostly immigrant. And I feel so blessed to have this school named after me so that I can help these immigrant poor kids get the kind of quality education that I had, because it is so important now, especially in our nation's history, as we increasingly become a nation that is minority-oriented, as well as being very, very immigrant-oriented. My principal job now is speaking. I leave right after this ceremony and go to Las Vegas, where I'll be speaking to a technology audience tomorrow. And then as soon as I finish that around noon tomorrow, I will take off for Moscow in Russia and speak to a group of individuals on the world economic situation. As I go around the country and speak to many audiences and speak overseas as well, I'm often asked to speak about leadership, particularly the difference between, say, being the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and being Secretary of State. My answer is not much difference at all. When I left the Army, I didn't expect to go back into government, but when President Bush asked me to be Secretary of State, I was honored. But on the first morning, going down to the Department of State, I was having coffee with my wife, Alma. My wife is now almost 51 years. And so we're sitting there, and she says to me, "Now listen," yes dear, "when you go down here this morning, remember, these are diplomats and ambassadors and foreign service officers and civilians. Don't go down there and act like you're taking over some infantry battalion. You behave yourself." Yes, dear. I walk in the State Department, several hundred employees are waiting to greet me. I go to the lectern, I look over the crowd. I can only think of one thing to say. "Good morning, troops, how are ya?" I resisted saying hoo-ah, because that would have scared everybody out of the other crowd. But nevertheless, the point is that my whole experience, over 50-odd years of leadership and management positions, what I practice is what I learned here at the infantry school at Fort Benning. I still remember driving out of the post and seeing the motto, "Follow me." Me was me, but the verb was follow. And everything that had to do with leadership had to do with followership. It's the only way that I knew how to operate, to put followers in the best possible position to get the job done, to give any group of human beings a purpose for what they're trying to do. Not only missions and goals, but a purpose. How are you serving society? The mission of the infantry was to close with the enemy and kill and destroy him by fire and maneuver, but the purpose was to secure the nation, to make the nation safe for its own people, and to be an inspiration to the rest of the world. I learned that here, mission and purpose. I learned the importance of taking care of the troops, knowing that they're the ones who get the job done. But I also understood that followers need good leaders. Followers need leaders who will inspire them. Followers need leaders who have courage, moral and physical courage. Followers need leaders who understand how to take care and to be the perfect example for the followers that you want to follow you, whether it's in combat or in business. Everything I've ever done since then, whether it was a senior political level, senior diplomatic level, or senior military level, it always reflected the lessons that I learned here in the 4 years that I spent at Fort Benning, Georgia. The Rangers who have participated in this competition are the ones who get the job done for the nation. You are the best of the followers, and you are also the best of the leaders. You will leave here to inspire your fellow Rangers, but to inspire soldiers throughout the Army. You are the ones who carry forward the Ranger tradition, from Rogers to Marion, Mosby, to the boys of Pont du Hoc, to the boys of today, who add to the Ranger legend in Afghanistan and in Iraq. Over the past several days, you have demonstrated not only your physical and mental ability, you have demonstrated the strength of your character, your determination, your will to prevail, no matter what the obstacles. I know what you've gone through. I know what you went through to prepare yourself for this challenge. I also know what your families went through with you and the sacrifices that they made, and I thank them for their support of your efforts. I am proud and humbled to be with you and to witness your success. Take what you have achieved back to your units to inspire new generations of Rangers and to inspire soldiers throughout our beloved Army. Always remember the story of Dog White Sector of Omaha Beach, when Brigadier General Norman Cota of the 29th Infantry Division approached Major Max Schneider of the 5th Ranger Battalion and asked, "What outfit is this?" Schneider answered, "5th Rangers." And Cota replied, "Well, goddammit, if you're Rangers, lead the way." That is what you and your forebearers and your successors have done and will do in the future to protect this great nation of ours and to fight the nation's enemies. Rangers will always be there to lead the way. Congratulations, and thank you very much.